Hey everyone, if we're meeting for the first time, my name is Paul Vacheski and welcome to the Real Estate Classroom YouTube channel. It's just a place that if you're studying for your real estate licensing exam, I have videos that have all the answers to all the questions you could have on that exam. In today's video, I'm going to discuss three concepts that you have to know for that exam. Number one is adverse possession. The second one is a doctrine known as quiet title action. And the third one is what we call color of title. And all three kind of go hand in foot here. So that's why I'm putting all three of these concepts into one video. Now, some of you may know that I did a previous video on what we call involuntary alienation, which adverse possession is a part of. And if you have not watched that video, I highly encourage you to take a look at it. It's right up here in the upper right-hand corner. I shall leave a link for you. Now, adverse possession is what we know as involuntary alienation. It's a key real estate term that you have to know as well. But basically, it means that under certain circumstances, an owner of a piece of property can lose their property against their will. It's not like they're voluntarily selling the property as we would see with voluntary alienation. This is where something happens, an event happens, something where that true owner loses their ownership interest in that property. There are four ways that we see involuntary alienation. And number one is escheat. Number two is eminent domain. Number three is foreclosure. And then the fourth one is adverse possession. Now, I have talked about each and every one of these in previous videos, but in today's video, I'm going to focus and go really deep into the concept of adverse possession. Now, adverse possession starts out as an illegal act, right? So when we think of trespassing, the first thing we think of is somebody goes on to someone else's piece of property without their permission, and they are trespassing. It is breaking the law. Trespassing is a crime. But there is a point at which a trespasser becomes what we call an adverse possessor. All right? So they start out trespassing. They're breaking the law. They're known as a trespasser. But because they have met certain legal elements, they have gained certain rights to that property as an adverse possessor. And that's what I want to discuss. How does that adverse possessor make claim to title? And there are five essential elements that adverse possessor must establish for them to make that claim. Okay, on the slide that you see on your screen, I have outlined the five essential elements that an adverse possessor is going to have to establish and demonstrate in front of a court if they want to obtain title to the property under the doctrine of adverse possession. Number one, there must be continuous possession for a specific statutory period of time. And what I mean by continuous possession is I don't mean that they have to stay on that piece of property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I mean, they can go to the grocery store, they can go on vacation and whatnot. What I'm talking about here is they have continuously possessed the property for that state stipulated statutory period of time, meaning they didn't stay on the property for a year, then go to another state and live for a year and then come back. That would be a break in that continuous possession. Now, the statutory period of time that's required depends on the state, and you don't have to know the specific period of time for your licensing exam unless it's going to be asked on your state portion of your exam. But on the national side, they will not ask you this. You only have to know that it has to be continuous possession for a statutory period of time. Now, interestingly enough, in most states, that statutory period of time is actually the statute of limitations to bring criminal charges against someone who is trespassing. And that can be anywhere between 5 and 25 years. So not in every state, but in most states. So element number one is the adverse possessor must possess the property continuously for a statutory period of time. Essential element number two, it must be distinct, sometimes referred to as the entry in the use of the property, meaning the adverse possessor must physically enter the property and use it like the true owner would use, and also use it in the way that the property was intended to be used. And that's a very important distinction. So, for example, if there is a absentee owner on a house, on an acre of land, that adverse possessor may move into the property and possess it and use it like the true owner would if they lived in that house. But let's say it's a unique property. Let's say that it's a hunting lodge above the Arctic Circle, and you're only allowed to hunt above the Arctic Circle, let's say in the month of July. And so the adverse possessor goes up to that lodge above the Arctic Circle and possesses it as it was intended to be used for the month of July. That person may be able to make a legitimate claim saying that they have fulfilled the terms or the requirements under that second essential element. Number 3, actual use, or what we call exclusive use. That means that the adverse possessor is exclusively possessing and using that parcel of land. They are not sharing the use or the possession with the true owner. It's exclusive to the adverse possessor. Number 4, it has to be open and visible, or sometimes we hear it as open and notorious. The adverse possessor must be very open and transparent about their possession and use of the property. They're not hiding anything. In fact, the neighbor should be able to view what's going on that piece of property and have no reason to believe that the adverse possessor is not the true owner. The adverse possessor is doing everything and acting like they are the true owner. That's called giving constructive notice. And they're actually giving constructive notice to the true owner that, hey, I'm not hiding anything. I'm not trying to be deceptive. I'm here. I've moved in. I'm taking care of the lawn. I'm planting flowers. I put up a fence. I'm doing maintenance to the house and the buildings that are on it. They are hiding nothing, and they're doing it right in front of the true owner. It's up to the true owner then to take action to remove the adverse possessor. And if they don't, then they can lose the property under adverse possession. So that's the 4th essential element. Number 5, hostile. Their possession, their use of the property has to be hostile, or sometimes known as adverse, meaning they are doing it without the permission of the true owner. So they didn't ask the true owner if they could possess the property or if they could even use it. They just did it. And they didn't ask permission to do it. Those are the 5 essential elements that adverse possessor must be able to prove that they have established when they go into court and try to get the ownership to that property. Okay, the next phase in obtaining title under adverse possession is obtaining title itself. And how do we do that? Well, remember, the first thing is the adverse possessor had to establish those 5 essential elements. Number 2 is once they've done that, and remember, including for that statutory period of time, then the adverse possessor is going to bring what's called quiet title action. It's a lawsuit in local court. And this is interesting. It's against everyone and anyone who may have a legal claim to the property, including but not limited to the true owner. It's called quiet title action. That's a key real estate term that you have to know. Now, what is the court going to look at and use to determine whether or not they should transfer title to the adverse possessor? Well, they're looking for those 5 elements, and they're looking for what's called title or color of title. Color of title is another key real estate term. And it basically is the adverse possessor needs to demonstrate or did they give the appearance of having good and valid title when in fact they really didn't. Now, how do you do that? Well, the adverse possessor did things like maybe they paid the property taxes and they have those canceled checks to prove that they paid the property tax. Because remember, the county could care less who pays the taxes, only that the taxes are paid. And by the adverse possessor paying those taxes, they are demonstrating color of title. Remember, they may be mowing the lawn and putting up a fence and trimming the trees and cleaning up after storms and talking to the neighbors and painting the house and the buildings that are on there and fixing the concrete in the driveway, doing everything that a normal owner would do And I guess I always explain it to my students is, if you have convinced your neighbor openly and notoriously where they had no idea that you were not the true owner of that property, then you have demonstrated the color of title. That's the best way to describe color of title. Now, once the adverse possessor has demonstrated all these things to a judge, then the judge is going to decide whether or not they have met the standard to transfer title to the adverse possessor under the doctrine of adverse possession. Another thing I would like to discuss real quick, because I've had several students email me as of late saying that they've had this concept on their test, and I had not done a video on it, so I thought I'd add it in here, and that's called adverse possession by tacking. Several states do allow this. So let's say that this, for example, the statutory period of time in your state is 10 years. And your mom started out as adverse possessor number 1. And mom stayed on that property for 3 years. And remember, mom fulfilled all the essential elements, did everything by the book. Mom wants to take off. So you, her son, the smooth transition from mom to you as adverse possessors. You finish out the remaining 7 years of that 10-year statutory period of time. So mom had the first 3, then you had the second 7, which totals 10 years, which in your state is, in our example, is the statutory period of time. You could then go into court, file a quiet title action, and use the doctrine of adverse possession by tacking if your state allows that. And again, you would have to go through the exact same process that we discussed here in the video, but it's just another mechanism to obtain that continuous use for a statutory period of time. We call it adverse possession by tacking, and don't be surprised if you don't see that on your real estate licensing exam. All right, if you're going to continue studying, I highly recommend that you check out the video on involuntary alienation. We talked about it in this video, and the link is right up here in the box. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Click on the little circle to my left. Comments and questions, love them both. Put them down in the comment section. I would appreciate that. That's all I got for today's video. Thanks for hanging. I'll see y'all in the next video.